Nicole, you have no idea how close your flight came to disaster because of one decision made in a fancy boardroom. While thousands of passengers blamed bad weather and technical glitches, I knew the truth. An airline does not collapse because of storms. It collapses when people with expensive suits believe they understand a business they have never actually worked in. By the time they realized what they had destroyed, it was already too late to stop the avalanche they had started. My name is Natalie Brooks, and for 11 years I kept one of the busiest regional airlines in America running. My official title was Operations Control Manager, but that never explained what I actually did. My real job was solving hundreds of problems every single day before anyone else even noticed they existed. Delayed crews, mechanical issues, storms, runway closures, missing aircraft, exhausted pilots, broken software. If something could go wrong, it usually did, and somehow my team always found a way to keep the schedule moving. Most passengers never think about people like us. They see smiling flight attendants and shiny airplanes parked at the gate. They assume everything works automatically because computers handle it all. They could not be more wrong. Behind every departure is a room full of exhausted people making thousands of decisions every hour while staring at walls covered in monitors. One mistake can delay an entire network. Several mistakes can shut down an airline. Our control center was hidden inside an old office building near the airport. It had no windows, terrible fluorescent lighting, and coffee so bad it tasted like burned cardboard. After working there for more than a decade, I barely noticed anymore. The place felt more like home than my own apartment. The software we depended on every day was called Skybridge. Whoever named it clearly had a sense of humor because there was nothing smooth about it. The system had been patched, repaired, modified, and held together for decades. Every year someone promised a replacement system, and every year the budget disappeared. Instead, experienced employees quietly created workarounds that kept everything alive. Over the years I wrote dozens of custom scripts that solved problems the original programmers never imagined. They automatically corrected scheduling conflicts, rebuilt damaged crew assignments, synchronized dispatch data, and repaired communication failures before anyone realized something had broken. Officially those tools did not exist. Unofficially, they were the reason our airline continued operating. One Tuesday morning started exactly like every other shift. I arrived before sunrise, logged into my workstation, and immediately found 3 weather systems threatening flights across the East Coast. My supervisor, Carl, shuffled over carrying an oversized breakfast sandwich. "Looks ugly today," he muttered. "Nothing we cannot handle," I answered while already rerouting aircraft around thunderstorms forming over the Carolinas. Within 15 minutes I had reassigned flight crews, adjusted fuel planning, and prevented several unnecessary delays. The warning messages disappeared from my screens one after another. Moments like those reminded me why I loved my job. Every successful day felt like beating chaos one more time. Then the control room door opened. Everyone stopped talking. Walking toward us were Ethan Parker, the airline founder's son, and his brand new executive advisor, Madison Collins. Ethan had recently returned after spending years traveling the world while collecting executive titles he had never earned. Madison came from social media marketing and somehow convinced senior leadership she understood airline operations despite never working a single day inside one. Together they looked completely out of place inside operations control. Their expensive clothes, polished smiles, and perfect confidence stood in sharp contrast to the tired dispatchers who had been fighting delays since for that morning. "Natalie," Ethan said with an enthusiastic grin, "exactly who we wanted to see." I leaned back in my chair. "That usually means trouble." He laughed like I had made a joke. "Dad wants us to learn every part of the business. We are evaluating opportunities to modernize operations and improve efficiency." Modernize. I hated that word. Companies almost never used it to mean making things better. Usually it meant replacing experienced employees with software nobody understood. "Observe all you want," I replied. "Just please do not touch anything on these monitors." Madison stepped closer anyway. "This interface looks incredibly outdated." "Because it is," I answered, "but outdated does not mean unreliable." She smiled politely, clearly dismissing everything I said. "There is always room for innovation." Before I could answer, Ethan pointed toward one of my routing displays. "What exactly does this screen do?" "It keeps airplanes from ending up in the wrong place." He reached toward the keyboard. "Do not touch it." My voice came out sharper than I intended. He slowly pulled back his hand. "Relax, I was only curious." "Curiosity is expensive in this room," I replied. One wrong command can delay hundreds of passengers before lunch. For just a second his smile disappeared, then he straightened his jacket. We have a strategy meeting at noon. Attendance is mandatory. I already have work. This is more important. No, I said quietly. Keeping airplanes moving is more important. He stared at me for several seconds before turning toward the exit. We will discuss that later. As soon as the door closed, Carl looked across the room. I have a bad feeling about this. So do I. At exactly noon I entered the executive conference room overlooking the airport. The company founder was missing. That worried me more than anything else. Instead, Ethan sat confidently at the head of the table while Madison prepared a colorful presentation filled with charts and marketing slogans. The first slide read Building the Future. Madison began explaining how our operations department spent too much time reacting to problems instead of preventing them. Then she introduced their solution. Artificial intelligence would soon replace much of the experienced operations staff. Several managers exchanged nervous looks. I raised my hand. What exactly will the system automate? Scheduling, crew assignments, flight routing, delay management, basically everything. I almost laughed. Those are not separate jobs. They constantly affect each other. She clicked to another slide showing proposed route reductions. We identified unnecessary regional flights that can simply be combined using larger aircraft. I studied the map before looking back at her. Those airports cannot handle larger aircraft. Landing fees are different. Passenger demand is different. Business travelers choose frequency over capacity. If you eliminate those flights, customers will simply switch to another airline. Silence filled the room. Madison glanced toward Ethan. He cleared his throat. That sounds like legacy thinking. No, I replied. That sounds like experience. His expression hardened. We believe operations has become too dependent on individual employees. We need systems anyone can manage. In that moment I understood exactly what this meeting was really about. They did not want better operations. They wanted to prove they no longer needed the people who had built them. Over the next 2 weeks everything changed. Veteran employees were quietly dismissed. Experienced schedulers disappeared. Night support teams were eliminated. Critical maintenance positions remained vacant while expensive consultants wandered through the building asking questions nobody working there had time to answer. Every warning report I submitted was ignored. Every risk assessment disappeared into executive inboxes without response. Whenever I challenged another reckless decision, Ethan smiled and repeated the same sentence. Trust the process. I stopped arguing, not because they had convinced me, because I realized they had already decided expertise was their biggest obstacle. And when leaders stop valuing the people who actually keep the business alive, they rarely recognize the disaster until it reaches their own office door. For the next several days, I quietly watched the company dismantle years of institutional knowledge. Instead of fighting every bad decision, I focused on documenting my work and organizing the tools I had personally created over the years. Every custom automation, every workflow improvement, and every recovery script I had written was placed into my own secured workspace exactly the way company policy allowed. I was not deleting anything or damaging company property. I was simply making sure my personal productivity tools remained connected to my employee account, just as they always had. Most people never realized how much those tools actually accomplished. Every Thursday the crew scheduling software would briefly fail during synchronization. My scripts automatically restored pilot assignments before dispatchers even noticed the interruption. When dispatch data became corrupted during weather events, another program corrected it within seconds. Those quiet fixes saved thousands of hours every year, yet almost nobody outside operations even knew they existed. Late one afternoon, Madison walked into my office carrying her tablet and wearing the same confident smile she always had. She glanced at my monitor as lines of code scrolled across the screen. Working late again, Natalie? Just organizing everything for whoever comes after me, I answered. Perfect, she replied cheerfully. The consultants arrive next week, so transition should be simple. I smiled politely. I certainly hope so. By Friday afternoon an invitation appeared on my calendar. Human Resources, 3 o'clock, no agenda, no explanation. I already knew exactly what it meant. Before leaving my desk, I packed the framed picture of my golden retriever, my favorite coffee mug, and a few notebooks I had collected during 11 years inside that building. Carl noticed immediately. Everything okay? Guess I am about to find out. The Human Resources office felt strangely quiet. Ethan sat beside Madison while an HR manager arranged paperwork across the table. Natalie, thank you for coming, Ethan began. I remained standing. After reviewing our restructuring plans, we have decided your leadership style no longer aligns with the future direction of the company. There it was. Years of experience reduced to corporate vocabulary. Madison added another rehearsed sentence. We are building a more agile culture with fresh perspectives. Fresh perspectives. I almost smiled. You mean people who agree with you? Ethan slid a folder toward me. Today will be your final day with the company. Here is your severance package. I never opened it. Instead, I removed my employee badge and gently placed it on the table. Keep it. His confident smile returned. I know this is emotional, but the company will be fine. I looked directly into his eyes. You think you replaced experience with software. What you actually replaced was understanding. Without another word, I walked out of the office. As the elevator doors closed behind me, I opened the secure administration application connected to my employee profile. Company policy automatically disabled personal workflow tools once an employee account became inactive. A confirmation message appeared asking whether I wanted to end my active work session. I pressed the confirmation button. That single action completed the standard security process exactly as designed. I walked into the afternoon sunshine feeling lighter than I had in years. An hour later my phone began vibrating. First Carl called. Natalie, something strange is happening. Flight assignments are disappearing. Dispatch keeps throwing authorization errors. I listened quietly. Then another call arrived. Then another. I did not answer. Instead, I opened a public flight tracking website and watched departure boards slowly change from on time to delayed. Within minutes, delays spread across multiple airports. Without the automated recovery tools quietly repairing background problems, hidden software weaknesses started appearing everywhere at once. Dispatchers suddenly had to perform manually what computers had been fixing silently for years. By early evening, the airline announced widespread operational disruptions. Then Ethan finally called. Please answer. I ignored it. A text message followed almost immediately. We need your help. Another arrived. Name your price. I set my phone down and finished my coffee. Several hours later, one final caller appeared on my screen. It was Richard Parker, the company founder. Unlike his son, Richard had actually built the airline from nothing. We had argued many times over the years, but he respected people who understood the work. Natalie, his voice sounded exhausted. Please tell me how to fix this. I took a deep breath. The system is doing exactly what company policy tells it to do. My employee account ended, so my personal workflow tools were automatically disconnected. Silence filled the line. Richard finally spoke. Ethan never asked about any of those tools. No, he never asked. He only assumed they were unnecessary. He sighed heavily. Come back. I will remove everyone responsible. We will start over. Months earlier I probably would have accepted immediately. But something inside me had changed. Respect offered only after disaster is not respect at all. It is desperation. I appreciate the offer, Richard, but my time here is finished. When I ended the call, I felt no anger, only relief. The following morning my inbox exploded with emails from recruiters across the aviation industry. News about the airline shutdown had spread faster than anyone expected. People who understood operations immediately recognized what had really happened. One message stood out. It came from Daniel Chen, Vice President of Operations for our largest competitor. Lunch today, I think we should talk. We met that afternoon at a quiet steakhouse near the airport. Daniel smiled as soon as I sat down. I have spent years trying to understand why your airline consistently recovered from disruptions faster than everyone else. Now I think I know. I laughed. It was never magic, just preparation. He slid a contract across the table. We do not want proprietary software. We want the person capable of building something even better. The salary was nearly 3 times what I had earned before. There was also one sentence that mattered more than anything else. Operations decisions belong to operations. No executive interference. I signed without hesitation. Monday morning I started working from home with a fresh cup of coffee, peaceful music, and no emergency phone calls interrupting breakfast. For the first time in over a decade, solving problems actually felt enjoyable again. Meanwhile, television news showed my former airline struggling through another day of cancellations. Reporters questioned executives about poor leadership while competitors absorbed thousands of displaced passengers. A week later, Ethan quietly resigned. Several months after that, the airline was sold during a corporate restructuring. Carl eventually joined my new company, along with several former coworkers who deserved far better than they had received. Looking back, people often assume my story is about revenge. It is not. It is about value. Too many companies believe experience can be replaced with presentations, buzzwords, and confidence. They forget that businesses survive because of people who solve problems nobody else even notices. Those people rarely ask for applause. They simply keep everything running until someone convinces themselves they are no longer needed. Now I earn more, sleep better, and work with leaders who actually listen when experienced employees speak. Every time I watch one of our airplanes climb safely into the sky, I remember the lesson my former employer learned far too late. Knowledge is invisible until it disappears, and by the time you realize what it was worth, replacing it usually costs far more than respecting it ever would have.